the third period. Dumped in by Brown. Kinnis dodges a check, moves it ahead to Sullivan. Sullivan fires it to the corner. McCarthy picks it up. McCarthy looks back to the point, decides to go to the corner to Cruz. Cruz is tied up. Ronning attempting to clear, and does. One of the differences in the hockey game tonight, Calgary 0 for 8 with a man advantage. And on the power play, managed just 14 shots on goal. At the point, Moose's shot sails wide. The other side, Dahlquist trying to keep it in. It deflects off the Vancouver player McIntyre to center ice. Now Linden gets to the line, his shot, and the save by Vernon. 4:43 remaining in the third period. 4-0. The Vancouver Canucks lead. There was no scoring in the first period. Vancouver took control with 3 goals in the second, and Trevor Linden has scored in the third. Jelena moves into the slot. His shot is right on. And Vernon had problems trying to cover up the rebound against McIntyre. It comes out front, and it's fired wide, but the whistle had already gone. 4:22 remains in the third, and now there's a gathering at the side of the Calgary net.
Well, Vancouver should be doing their best to get out of these. There's no advantage for the Canucks. On the other hand, the Calgary Flames might be trying to send a message for 2 nights from now.
Meet the Parker twins, Bob and Fred.
Hi.
Identical in every way, except when it comes to taking care of their cars. Bob likes the shine of original Armor All Protectant, but not Fred.
I gotta be me.
Fred's discovered the rich, deep finish of new low-gloss Armor All. It protects like original Armor All.
But without the glossy shine.
Original or new low gloss.
Now it's your choice.
Only from Armor All.
Hey, can I try that?
We want to make it perfectly clear. You'll find guaranteed low prices at your Canadian Tire store every day. If you find a better price anywhere, we'll match it. Guaranteed.
While many of the 17,000 plus at the Saddle Dome have already started heading for the exits, Ronnie Stern goes to the penalty box for high sticking. 15:38 of the third period.
The flack on McIntyre puts him down. And Paul Stewart, who had perfect position on that one, I think was probably...
Was that a makeup call for the one that he missed earlier on Lume?
I think he might have been averaging that one with the lumber that Stern laid on Lume.
Hedeken at the point. Over to Brown, back to Hedeken. Brown takes a look, gives it to Hedeken. Over to Jelena. Jelena tried to hit McIntyre. Now Brown scores! Brown moved in from the point as Jelena initially tried to hit McIntyre at the side of the net. The puck ricocheted back to Brown, and it's 5-0 Vancouver.
Well, I would have lost a bet on this game if somebody would have told me that it would be 5-0 Vancouver 56 minutes ago. I would have had a discussion. Look at this shot here. Brown goes right to the roof, and when you're in close and you can get that sort of velocity and trajectory, how do you like those 2 words, Don, on a puck? It's pretty difficult for a smaller goalie to stop him. Brown can shoot the puck. He showed it there, and he simply put it right by Vernon's collarbone.
Jeff Brown was telling me this morning that the move to Vancouver was made much easier than when he initially went to St. Louis. He didn't know a soul when he went to St. Louis, but there were 5 former teammates from St. Louis with Vancouver.
Well, they could have blindfolded him, took him into the room, and he might have thought he was in St. Louis a couple of years ago.
And one of the people that went to Vancouver from St. Louis with him, Brett Hedeken, draws an assist on the goal along with Martin Jelena at 15:53. A power play goal for the Vancouver Canucks. And they have been very impressive with their play tonight at the Saddle Dome. 3:48 remaining. Nylander's long shot steered to the corner by McLean. Puck is centered. Patrick can't shoot it, but dumps it back to the net. Didick slowly moves out, banks it off the glass, and almost hit Momesso on the back of the head. Game 2 takes place here at the Saddle Dome on Wednesday. And with this victory, the Vancouver Canucks have taken home ice advantage away from the Calgary Flames. And in the other quarterfinal series, the San Jose Sharks have really taken home ice advantage away from the Detroit Red Wings. One more game at the Joe Louis Arena, and then the series shifts to San Jose for 3 games. In case you missed it, the Sharks tonight with a 5-4 win over the Red Wings.
San Jose much more used to the travel schedule that will take them across the continent than the Detroit Red Wings are. You still to give them the edge.
Sullivan shot kicked to the corner by McLean. McInnes wound up and whistled one high off the glass. And McLean was ducking on that one.
And rightly so. McLean shaking his head as the puck went 200 feet down the other end, pretty much on its own steam after that one. Whistled by his ears.
2:20 the time remaining. Ronning steals it at center ice. Quite content to take it back into his own zone as the Canucks kill off some time. Now Ronning flips it down the ice, and in the neutral zone, a penalty call as McCarthy and Courtnall collide. And now McCarthy hits Linden, I believe, in the back of the head.
Well, I'd be curious to see how Paul Stewart assesses these calls. Clearly, Calgary are the instigators in it. Linden has had a very, very strong game. Calgary looking to send a message. You get into these with a whistle. And Stewart will handle it as well as anybody.
And now Cruz wants to go with Lume. And I'm not quite sure who that is who has intervened, but Linden is still down.
Larry Ashley tending to Trevor Linden.
Linden was down, and McCarthy was flailing away at him on the back of the head.
Well, Vancouver's played a very, very clever game. Lots of frustration on the part of the Calgary Flames. See if we can pick out what hurt Linden here.
Well, McCarthy gave him a pretty good shot right in the back of the head. That dropped him to his knees.
Now here's one of the problems. You get linesmen in, and all of a sudden guys think that it's looked after, and it's not. If the guys aren't in, perhaps you don't have this problem.
GMC Sierra, the perfect way to get away.
Ladies and gentlemen, the Flying Trapeze!
The crowd looked up to see the flips on the flying trapeze.
Hey, what are you eating?
Kellogg's Raisin Bran.
Kellogg's Raisin Bran?
You know, 2 scoops of plump, juicy raisins and whole grain flakes with bran.
2 scoops of raisins?
2 scoops.
The triple flip! The flip was out of control because the catcher went for a bowl of 2 scoops of raisins and Kellogg's Raisin Bran.
Stay with us after the game for the Molson Canadian 3-star selections, and that gentleman, Kirk McLean, is certainly one of the candidates based on the way he has performed tonight. We shouldn't be surprised, I guess, that this game erupted the way it did based on what took place between the two teams during the course of regular season play. The only surprise, perhaps, is that it took so long to erupt. During the 7 regular season games, there were 15 fighting majors, 7 game misconducts, 3 majors for other reasons, and 3 misconducts. It started with McCarthy and Courtnall at center ice, and then McCarthy walloped Linden on the back of the head.
Well, anytime you get into different instances like this in a game, it's nice to have a purpose, and I'm not sure that there was enough emotion taking place in that particular set of circumstances to justify what took place. When it gets to be calculated, it's something that I don't really care for, and I don't know that this game has benefited from the last few minutes that we've looked at. The Winnipeg Jets led the league as far as penalty minutes per game. San Jose right at the bottom, and you can see what that does for you in their victory over Detroit tonight. Vancouver and Calgary pretty close and in the middle of the pack. Calgary and Vancouver both had a tremendous number of power play advantages against them. 441 for the Calgary Flames, 458 for Vancouver. So pretty big numbers, and if you can reduce those and get a lot of these 2-minuters off the clock, you play more 5-on-5, and that's generally where playoff hockey is won, 5-on-5. And if you look at the game tonight, Vancouver has dominated 5-on-5. That was a question mark that we had at the start of the series this evening. Vancouver's done it, and that's why they're up 5-0.
So the Calgary Flames are trying to send a message for 48 hours from now. Game 2, Vancouver and Calgary, 7:30 Mountain, 6:30 Pacific for viewers in Alberta and BC. While those of you Saskatchewan East will see Game 2 of the Leafs and Hawks at 7:30 Eastern, with the Maple Leafs holding a 1-0 series lead.
Well, a double minor has been assessed against McCarthy. 4 minutes for roughing plus a 10-minute misconduct. Cruz draws a roughing minor and a misconduct. Stern picks up a misconduct. Courtnall gets a roughing minor and a 10-minute misconduct. All this at 17:51. So the Vancouver power play comes on the ice again. Number 1 on the road this year, number 24 at home. And Pat Quinn today was saying it's an absolute puzzle to me why there's such a discrepancy. But as you explained earlier, Jim, on the road, there's a tendency to keep the power play much simpler.
Well, statistically as well, Vancouver had about a half a dozen great power plays on the road. They got 4 against San Jose one night with not a lot of power play opportunities, a bunch against Anaheim another night. And when you do that 4 or 5 times, it can really drive your percentage up, coupled with a few nights when they were absolutely awful at home. And there you have a discrepancy.
Bure comes down the right side against Yanni. Yanni takes it away from him and clears. Kirk McLean, who has started 26 consecutive playoff games for the Vancouver Canucks, has been most impressive tonight. Carson was in the slot, tried to slip it to the side of the net to Craven. It was broken up. And now Brown goes back into his own zone, being watched by Reichel. Leaves it there for Hedican, and Hedican flips it back to the net. 1:10 remaining in the hockey game. Vancouver on the power play, leading by a score of 5-0. As we move into the final minute, Diddick is watched as he goes back of his own net by Titov. He slips it ahead to Babbage, coming down the left side. Ronning throws it in front. Nobody there. Long shot from the point by Diddick. It's gloved and held by Mike Vernon. Now Mike Vernon with only 1 game against Vancouver this year. It was a 6-3 loss. His counterpart was the same at the other end of the arena. Vernon with some nice rest. What do you think? Unfortunate injury. Game 2? I wouldn't think so, but as we said at the start of this hockey game, and we've seen throughout the year, Dave King is not opposed to making changes that might otherwise surprise some guys, and Kidd might be one of those changes. Babbage at the point, lets a long shot go wide. Ronning controls. For Diddick, back to Ronning at the side of the net, and another penalty has been called. And we've got another pushing, shoving match taking place in the corner. And this comes with 23.6 seconds remaining in the hockey game. Well, Paul Stewart put his whistle in his pocket, figuring he might have to help. Linden just serving notice that he's going to take a couple, but he's not going to continue to take it without retaliating. And right now,
with less than 24 seconds remaining in this hockey game, it's all over and you can make a bit of a stand without hurting your team.
Linden has played very well tonight for Vancouver. He has a goal. He's played a physical hockey game.
No question, Vancouver, in all likelihood, will be keeping the same lineup. They didn't dress Dantoski tonight. Charbonneau, Slager, Lafayette, or Brian Glynn, as we see the start to that ruckus. Yanni and Dahlquist with Linden, Martin Jelena wanting to be the pacifist. Lanny McDonald right to our left, watching the last few seconds of this hockey game. Not much of a smile behind that broom that he has underneath his nose.
Cross-checking penalty against Trevor Linden at 19:36. Didick watched as he goes back of his own net. Now it's McIntyre into the neutral zone. McIntyre works his way to the corner, falls, is taken heavily against the boards. Back to the point of Babbage. He lets the shot go. They jam away, and Tim Hunter thought that he had knocked it in, but the net was off its supports, and I think the whistle may have gone anyway as the result of that collision in the corner where McIntyre and Yanni had each other tied up.
Well, the big shot from the point as Hunter bumps through the crease. That was actually very, very close to being a goal.
And Tim Hunter would like nothing better than to score a goal in this playoff round here at the Saddle Dome.
Well, he said something to me that I thought was very interesting at the start of the series. He said, you know, we know a lot more about the Calgary Flames than they know about us. And as I mentioned a little bit earlier, statistically, they can get a little bit overconfident. We don't think the separation is quite as great as it is.
Well, Kirk McLean has to be the happiest guy in the building tonight for a couple of reasons. There were some people who were wondering about his play over the final few games of the season, but he scoffed at any suggestions that this playoff series would be a crossroads in his career. He said it takes a team to win, and I think that was very evident in front of Kirk McLean tonight, how the Vancouver Canucks played so well as a team.
Well, you have to love a playoff series when you can go through all the different statistics and parts of the game and build such a strong case for one team. But the part that you forget once in a while is that it takes execution. And the Vancouver Canucks, although outmanned and outnumbered in a lot of different areas, simply executed better. They had more discipline. Defensively, they were better. Offensively, they were better. Their special teams were better. Their goaltending was better. And when you put all those betters together, you get 5-0 and a 1-0 lead in the series.
Well, the Vancouver Canucks came to Calgary looking for a split. And now I'm sure Pat Quinn and all members of the Vancouver Canucks are thinking about the possibility of maybe returning home for Game 3 on Friday with a 2-0 lead. 5-0 Vancouver over Calgary. Game 1 tonight, Game 2 Wednesday here at the Saddle Dome.
Our Molson Canadian 3 stars. Star number 1, Kirk McLean with 31 saves. Trevor Linden with a goal tonight. Star number 2, star number 3, Gerald Didick of the Vancouver Canucks, who beat the Calgary Flames by a final score of 5-0 to take a 1-0 series lead. Our next game Wednesday night, Game 2, Vancouver and the Flames, 7:30 Mountain, 6:30 Pacific, for viewers in Alberta and BC. For tonight, thanks for tuning in, and good night from Calgary.
You too can be in television.
RCAF invades new airspace.
This half hour is 7 screw-ups.
Yeah, something like that.
Now it's double the impact with the Air Force. Catch them on television as well as radio.
A topical sweep at the events of the week.
There's lots of just plain goofy stuff.
The Royal Canadian Air Force on CBC, Friday at 7:30 on Living Television.
I look better in real life.
As it happens, just thinking about it makes me smile. The hosts have just the right mixture of information and joie de vivre.
This is Michael Enright.
It'll keep me in touch with things not only here in Canada.
Thanks for your calls.
Good to have you with us again.
But around the world.
Marina, you've been out in the streets of Moscow.
They bring it all together and they make it happen for us.
I'm Barbara Bunt.
I'm Michael Enright. Good night.
Take one.
For 8 o'clock. We're going to see some fairly rapid changes on the sports road from that Zara with the police towards gas.
Rescue crews and submarines. About 800,000 Palestinians.
Live, up to the minute. CBC Morning News, weekdays on CBC Television. Molson Hockey Night in Canada on CBC was brought to you by Molson Canadian. Take your best shot in the Molson Canadian Score a Million Stanley Cup contest. And by Pepsi. Be young, have fun, drink Pepsi. CBC Sports, home of the champions.
This is CBC.
Tonight, Serbs tighten the noose around a Muslim town. Audrey McLaughlin says she's stepping down. Copying a movie prank proves deadly. And on our magazine, the attack on a Muslim enclave in Bosnia. Could the UN have stopped the Serbs from surrounding Gorazda, and can it make them withdraw? And Canadian crime writers.
If you're going to kill somebody, for heaven's sakes, do it right, you know?
Secrets of the fictional detectives on Murder They Wrote, a documentary with Carol Off. CBC Primetime News with Peter Mansbridge and Pamela Wallen.
Good evening. The world all but gave up today on the besieged town of Gorazda. The UN says the enclave, which was supposed to be a safe haven, is now at the mercy of the Bosnian Serbs. So are the tens of thousands of people who sought refuge there.
Serb artillery bombarded the town relentlessly, even as Serb leaders were agreeing to yet another ceasefire. The UN says that's undoubtedly just another empty promise. The CBC's Anna Maria Tremonti reports tonight on the Serbian advance and the anger of those who cannot stop it.
Thousands of Sarajevans gathered in the streets today in a show of sympathy and solidarity for the tens of thousands of people under attack in Gorazda. It was a bitter Bosnian President Alija Izetbegović who addressed the crowd, clearly disappointed with the United Nations. We will save Gorazda, he told them, regardless of what happens. What they have been hearing today on the ham radios from Gorazda is chilling. UN relief workers say shells slammed into the city all day, seconds apart.
We are afraid that the possible capture of Gorazda by the Bosnian Serb forces could lead to a humanitarian disaster.
There are no pictures out of Gorazda, but beyond these hills, tens of thousands of frightened people huddled anywhere they could as heavy artillery rained down. The hospital was hit. So was the crowded refugee center. Serb tanks reportedly entered the city. The UN commander in Bosnia, Lieutenant General Sir Michael Rose, did not hide his anger with the Bosnian Serbs.
The assurances given during this past week to not only the United Nations, Mr. Kashi, but also to the international community, people like Mr. Churkin, have been consistently and totally ignored. And that is why we now find ourselves in a very serious situation indeed in and around Gorazda.
Rose has essentially admitted the peacekeepers can do little about Gorazda now, telling reporters the UN does not fight a war from white-painted vehicles. In the eyes of many, the UN is now discredited in Bosnia. Back in Moscow, Russia's envoy, Vitaly Churkin, was again uncharacteristically pessimistic about the Serbs. A small group of extremist Serbs could make the Serbian nation be involved in a catastrophe, he said. But his boss, Foreign Minister Andrei Kozyrev, was still urging negotiations.
There is also room for our partners and friends in the West to make it as clear to Muslims that they shouldn't try to use the situation or to provoke Serbs.
Tonight, the Bosnian Serbs are saying they will pull their weapons back 3 to 4 kilometers out of Gorazda. They will allow freedom of movement for aid workers and allow the injured to be taken out. But there is no timetable for any of that. The Serbs are clearly the ones in control. The fate of Gorazda is in their hands. The terms of a peace agreement will also be theirs. Anna Maria Tremonti, CBC News, Zagreb.
Gorazda has been under siege for most of the two-year war in Bosnia. Before the war, it had a population of about 37,000, but so many people fled nearby towns when they were overrun that now there are about 65,000 people there. For the last year, it has been a United Nations safe haven, but relief convoys have not arrived regularly, and most food supplies have been airdropped by the West. The Serbs control almost all the territory around Gorazda, and capturing the town would allow them to travel in that territory much more easily because Gorazda sits at the junction of several major roads and the Drina River.
The Serbs' move on Gorazda has practically paralyzed Washington. U.S. President Bill Clinton is now under more pressure than ever to match his rhetoric with his military muscle. But tonight, Clinton is still weighing his options. Here's our Washington correspondent, David Halton.
All but conceding that it's too late now to save Gorazda, President Clinton today delivered perhaps the understatement of the week.
This has not been a great weekend for the peace effort in Bosnia.
Nor, Clinton might have added, for American policy in Bosnia, the target today of a renewed wave of criticism.
It's Munich all over again. The United States is capitulating to Serb aggression. It's appeasing Serbia.
Critics like Harris say that from his presidential campaign on, Clinton has talked tough but failed to act tough.
And we may have to use military force. I would begin with air power against the Serbs.
It was shortly after his inauguration that Clinton called for selective airstrikes against the Serbs and the lifting of the UN arms embargo on the Bosnian government. But that policy was quickly shelved after Secretary of State Warren Christopher failed to sell it to European leaders. Critics say Clinton's rhetoric on Bosnia was always hollow.
I think we should act, we should lead, the United States should lead. We are, after all, the world's only superpower.
But as the fighting intensified in Bosnia, the critics say there was little evidence of that leadership and all too often conflicting signals about American intentions. The most recent example, the assault on Gorazda, which top American officials initially said they couldn't stop.
The circumstances around Gorazda do not lend themselves to the use of air power.
That was just a few days before U.S. aircraft were in fact used, but only to drop 4 bombs.
It sends a signal to the Bosnian Serbs that they can continue, regardless of our rhetoric, with their policy of savagery.
At the UN today, Bosnian Vice President Eyüp Ganic said he showed Secretary General Boutros Ghali a piece of paper that indicated the worthlessness of Western guarantees for Gorazda.
This was a safe zone, this big, and Gorazda was just a small spot. And the circle becomes smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller.
Apparently stung by those remarks, Boutros Ghali announced tonight that he's asked NATO to authorize more airstrikes to protect all 6 UN-designated safe areas in Bosnia. It was assumed that the proposal has been approved by the U.S. and also assumed that it comes too late to be of much comfort for the people of Gorazda. David Halton, CBC News, Washington.
And we'll be pursuing this story and all these latest developments later on our magazine. Peter will be talking with Louis Mackenzie, the Canadian who once commanded UN troops in Bosnia, and to Bosnia's Vice President Eyüp Ganic.
Former U.S. President Richard Nixon has suffered a stroke. He was taken to a hospital in New York City tonight, where he is now in intensive care. Nixon was president from 1969 until he was forced to resign in 1974 to avoid impeachment. He's now 81 years old.
To the Mideast now in East Jerusalem today, another attack on a bus. A man boarded the bus, took out an axe, and began striking at passengers. He was shot by an Israeli soldier. In all, 5 people were hurt.
In South Africa, word tonight of a possible breakthrough that could end the country's political crisis. The leader of the Zulu-based Inkatha Freedom Party may be about to change his mind about boycotting next week's election. Mangosuthu Buthelezi met today with South African President F.W. de Klerk and ANC officials. When the meeting broke up, Buthelezi said he believes a settlement can be reached. An end to Inkatha's boycott is crucial to stop the pre-election violence that has killed hundreds of people. Today, that violence continued. Members of the National Peacekeeping Force, set up to keep order in the townships, were caught in the crossfire. A photographer from South Africa's leading newspaper was killed.
Voting in South Africa's election begins 1 week from tomorrow. For the country's black majority, it is a dream realized. But as the CBC's Martin Seemungle reports tonight, there are other dreams that will have to wait.
They are dancing for freedom. In a few days, blacks will vote for the first time. They're celebrating because their party, the African National Congress, is promising jobs, peace, the beginning of a new life.
April 27th is going to change all the difficult conditions under which we have lived. We wanted to build a better life for all of you.
Mandela's visits to the impoverished townships are met with overwhelming joy. He carries a message they have waited a lifetime to hear.
Blacks were virtually prisoners in their own country. Apartheid denied them basic rights and created a huge gap between black and white. But thousands of blacks expect the gap to narrow overnight.
Yes, I think it will be better because the apartheid will be gone.
I think it will mean better living, as they are promising that you'll be having jobs, houses, and all that sort of things.
The sort of things whites have.
One of my patients came to me, and a maid servant, a black servant, came to her the other day and asked her where she will be moving after the 27th of April. So she said, "What do you mean?" She said, "No, this house will be her house after the 27th.
But the country's future president knows that change will take a lot of time and a lot of money. And he's already telling people not to expect too much too soon.
Must understand that we must be patient. Don't think that when you return from the election on the 27th of April, you are going to find a job. You are going to find a nice house. No.
Political freedom may just be a few days away, but social and economic liberation will take a lot longer. It's a bitter message to a people who have suffered so many years of oppression. Martin Seemungle, CBC News, Johannesburg.
I'm Carol Off. Canadian detective stories are all the rage these days. They feature a new breed of sleuth that isn't too savvy, but has a distinctly Canadian sense of ethics.
I'm not interested in writing about people that aren't basically decent. I mean, as far as the cops go, you know. And even the criminals often, to my mind, have some redeeming characteristic.
The homegrown hero isn't like American detectives.
He doesn't like getting blood on his shoes. He retches when he sees violent death. So he's a lot like the reader.
Canadian detective heroes, later on Primetime Magazine.
Federal NDP leader Audrey McLaughlin is resigning. She said today she will not be at the helm of her party in the next election. The CBC's Susan Harada has more on McLaughlin's decision.
It was the most media attention Audrey McLaughlin and the NDP have had since the election.
Is this an admission of responsibility?
And in announcing she won't lead the party in a future campaign, McLaughlin shouldered the blame for the way things turned out last October.
Politics is based on the harsh judgment, of course, of politics is electoral success. That's what politics is all about.
It's also, for the NDP right now, all about figuring out where to go from here. McLaughlin has been asked to stay on as leader and take part in that renewal process until it's complete and a new leader is chosen, likely by the spring of '96.
The leader who will be elected will be a person who
believes in the decisions that the party makes following that renewal process and can articulate them.
Former NDP MP Stephen Langdon thinks everybody responsible for the election results, not just the leader, should be replaced, and right away.
The renewal process, if it's going to work, is going to take a really full-scale house cleaning.
But another former NDP MP, Ian Waddell, says there were bigger problems than just the people who ran the election show.
It tended to be an uninspired period. There was problems with the provincial parties, and there was the growth in Western Canada, the reform movement.
Those are some of the issues to be addressed as the NDP takes stock. And in order to keep the focus strictly on renewal, the party has cancelled its leadership convention in August. It will hold instead a smaller policy conference. Susan Harada, CBC News, Ottawa.
Interest rates went up today in the United States. The U.S. Federal Reserve put its rate up 1/4 point, and that triggered increases at major banks. The central bank is trying to tighten the money supply because it is worried about inflation. North American stock markets reacted strongly. In New York, the market lost 41 points, and in Toronto, it lost 72 points. And now it is expected that the Bank of Canada will react to the American interest rate hike by raising its own lending rate tomorrow by about 20 basis points.
We still don't know how baby Muguet died. Over the weekend, the parents of the 2-month-old Quebec girl reported her missing, kidnapped from New York's Central Park. Later, the couple admitted making the story up and said they buried the girl's body east of Montreal. As Kevin Tibbles reports, today's autopsy couldn't pin down the cause of death.
In the tiny town of Saint-Romain, something terrible happened in this small house, but nobody knew about it until Saturday. That's when the owner of the house, Joseph Balès, and his wife and 4-year-old daughter turned up in New York City and told police that baby Muguet had been kidnapped. That touched off a search of big city proportions.
Had if anyone's seen anything suspicious or any activity.
I'd like anybody who has any information on the child that's missing.
The couple also made this televised appeal for help. But police in New York were getting suspicious. Some of the things Balès and his wife had told them were not panning out. Little things, like the fact they said they only spoke French. That held up until Detective John Hill said he was going out for ice cream.
I said, anybody want ice cream? The girl said, yes, I want ice cream, And if she can communicate with me, I certainly think the mother and father would be able to communicate.
By early Sunday, they confessed. Within an hour, Quebec Provincial Police had located a gym bag under a tree near Sherbrooke. Inside was the body. The parents now say they found the child dead in her crib 10 days ago, and that they panicked and headed for New York because there had been allegations of abuse involving a foster child in the past. Back in Saint-Romain, neighbors say the family was strange, keeping the curtains drawn, not talking to neighbors. Their babysitter says the children were kept on a strict vegetarian diet and only allowed to eat twice a day.
No milk, no eggs, no fish.
An autopsy performed on the body was inconclusive. While the baby showed no signs of physical injury, it did not determine how she died, and further tests are being conducted. Meanwhile, police in New York City say they are not going to charge the parents for setting off the search in Central Park, but they're still being questioned by Quebec police. Kevin Tibble, CBC News, Montreal.
In Ottawa tonight, police are saying that a controversial scene from a movie about college football may have played a part in the death of a 21-year-old man. Simon Gardner has the story.
I haven't seen a body impact.
It now appears this was much more than a hit and run. Police say Jason French and a friend were playing a daredevil game by lying head-to-head on the dividing line of the highway. The friend narrowly escaped being hit and went for help.
Well, from our investigation, it appears as if a movie that they had watched, which is quite a common movie that all the young people know about, it seems to have triggered them to pull a stunt like this.
The movie is called The Program. It's a coming-of-age film about college football players. In one scene, some of the players lie on a busy road to test their bravery. At least 3 young people in the U.S. who've watched this scene have imitated it and either been killed or critically injured. The scene has since been chopped by Touchstone Pictures, a division of the Walt Disney Company.
Don't be doing stupid things like that, and movies are movies, and,
Jason Sinden is one of several friends who helped Jason French celebrate his 21st birthday just hours before his death. He and the others blame what happened on alcohol, but say French was a risk taker.
He was kind of the crazy kind of guy. He was an outgoing person.
Police are still looking for the driver of the vehicle that hit Jason French. They say it's possible the driver doesn't even realize someone was hit. Simon Gardner, CBC News, Ottawa.
Well, tonight, part 2 of our CBC News series, Return to Vietnam. The fall of Saigon in 1975 brought an end to the Vietnam War.